Thank you. Is it visible there?
Yes, perfect.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, good afternoon, everyone. So I'm going to present this dynamic visual stimuli from platformers for the teaching of EFL motion events using an interactive video interface. So what is the problem? How do we teach English motion events to Spanish speakers? In particular, I work with high school Mexican students in Mexico City. So for starters, in case there's anyone here who doesn't know the problem very well, we know that there are different types of languages. Some of them are verb framed, such as Spanish, which is a Romance language in which the path is lexicalized in the verb and the manner is expressed via a subordinated verb. Whereas English as a Germanic language is a satellite frame language in which the verb expresses the manner and the path is expressed via a satellite. Here we have some examples. We have go up, go down, go in, go out. So the path is expressed via a satellite, up, down, in, and out, whereas in Spanish, we have the verbs subir, bajar, entrar, and salir. These verbs lexicalize the path. It is not expressed via a satellite. So Spanish lexicalizes the path, while it is said that English lexicalizes the manner. But what are some examples of lexicalization of manner? Let's see. Here I have some examples: to roll across, to swing over, to hook your way up, or to dash in. More examples: to glide on a rail, to bounce off a trampoline, to float down into the drains, and to climb up a rope. More examples: to curl up a tree, as I'm showing right now. Or these other interesting examples, they are dashing, slide through, and to ricochet. So these are what we call motion event construals. And the question is, how do we teach those to our students? So I will argue that we have to enhance the stimulus, the stimuli with which we work. And so I'm trying to figure out how to increase the degree of stimulation in terms of sensation, perception, and conceptualization. So I'll be using GIFs. These are dynamic visual stimuli, which are the ones that you've already been seeing during the last minutes. And I'll be using an interactive video interface. It is a website called ISL Collective. One advantage of these GIFs is that they provide an iterative stimulus. They show a continuous repetition of the stimulus, and the interactive video interface is more intensive as it involves a more personal engagement with the stimulus. And all of this should lead us to a reconceptualization and a resymbolization of these motion construal events. Motion event construal, sorry. So I got my stimuli from giphy.com, and as I already said, I'm using this website, ISL Collective. I would like to mention that I have already worked with these types of stimuli in order to develop other grammatical constructions, such as will for prediction is going to. But right now, the problem is how do we teach EFL motion event construals using these types of stimuli? So I've taken my stimuli from platformers. What are platformers? Before I tell you what platformers are, I'd like to mention that according to this documentary that we got from last year, today the global video game market is worth over $150 billion, which is more than the film and music industries combined. According to this website, video games are a bigger industry than movies and North American sports combined, thanks to the pandemic. So what is a platformer? According to Wikipedia, the core objective is to move the player character between points in a rendered environment. Platformers are characterized by their level of using jumping and climbing to navigate the player's environment and reach their goal. Other acrobatic maneuvers factor into the gameplay as well, such as climbing, swinging from objects such as vines or grappling hooks, jumping off walls, air dashing, gliding through the air, being shot from cannons, or bouncing from springboards or trampolines. So here's an example of what a platform looks from away. This is a map from a video game called Sonic. If we look closer, this is what the game or video game looks like once you are playing with it. These are examples of a two-dimensional perspective, but there is also There are also versions in which you can play in three-dimensional with a three-dimensional perspective, such as the one we're looking at right now. This is another example of another platform. This is called Ori, and that's the map, the one that is above. And the game, once one is playing it, it looks like what I'm showing you below. And for today, I'd like to discuss how I have developed some materials for the verbs dash, slide, glide, and bounce. So dash is commonly used with some prepositions such as against, away, by, off, out, into, over, across, and from. Dash refers to the act of running somewhere very quickly, a hasty or sudden movement. The translation I have found in most dictionaries is correct. It's not a very good translation, but that's the one you will find most often. For slide, we have prepositions such as slide into, back, through, down, off, from, on. And the definition I can give is to move along a smooth surface while maintaining a continuous contact with it. And we usually translate it into Spanish as deslizar. For glide, we have prepositions such as over, down, out, into, toward, and across. The definition: to move with a smooth, continuous motion, typically with little noise. And the translations that I have found most commonly are planear or deslizarse. And finally, bounce combines with up, from, out, into, off, down, at, and against. Definition: to move quickly up, back, or away from a surface after hitting it, to rebound once or repeatedly. In Spanish, we usually translate this as rebotar. So my first two examples, dash and slide, what are my stimuli? This is the first one, dash across, and slide through. This is from a platformer called Mega Man. And here I compare both of them, dash across and slide through. These are materials that I've been developing for my high school Mexican students who are learning English as a foreign language. Problem: how do we go from A to B? That's a problem that I present to my students. And then I ask them, should he dash across or slide through? I usually pick one student to answer. Then I give them the answer, slide through. And as you can see, the motion is being shown below. Second problem: how do we go from A to B? I ask my students and I give them two options, dash across or slide through. And of course, the answer is slide through. Another example: how do we go from A to B? Question: should he dash across the gap or slide through the gap? And of course, the answer is slide through the gap. Next, how do we go from A to B? Should he dash against the robot or should he slide under the robot? And the answer is to slide under, as it is being shown right now. Next problem: how can he cross the door? Two options: should he dash against it or should he slide through it? And the answer is he should dash against it. Next, how can the white knight evade the attack from the giant? I give them two different options: should he dash back away from the giant or should he slide through the giant? And the answer is he should dash back. Now, glide and bounce. So here's the first stimulus, gliding down and bouncing off a trampoline. Here we can observe both stimuli in comparison. And the problem I pose to my students is, where is too high? How can she go down with care so she doesn't get hurt? Does she have to glide down or does she have to bounce off? And the answer is she has to glide down, as we are observing right now. Next problem: how can I move from A to B? And I give them two options: should she glide or should she bounce off the trampoline that is being shown by the red arrow? And of course, she should bounce off the trampoline as it is being shown right now. Next, how can I move from A to B? Should she glide or should she bounce off the trampoline? And the answer is she should bounce off the trampoline. Next, how can I move from A to B? Should she glide or should she bounce off the trampoline? She should bounce off the trampoline, of course. How can I go down the forest? Should she glide or should she bounce off a trampoline? And the answer is she should glide down, as it is being shown right now. This one is a little bit longer than the other ones. There it is. Next, how can Ari get from here in the middle up above here. Should she glide or should she bounce off the two trampolines? Well, she should bounce off the two trampolines as I'm showing right now. That's the first one, and that's the second trampoline that she bounces off from. How can I get from here below to there above? Should she glide or should she bounce off the trampoline? There she goes. She bounces off the trampoline. How can I evade the dangers that are to the left? Should she glide over the dangers or should she bounce off the trampoline? And the answer is she should glide over the dangers. How can Ari evade all these thorns that are shown to the right side? Should she glide or should she bounce off the trampoline? She should glide down, evading the thorns. There it is. Well, now I'm going to show you how I adapt all of these stimuli to interactive video interface in ISL Collective, which I guess some of you already know. So I'm going to stop sharing screen for one moment so that I can start sharing the other screen. So this is ISL Collective. I have already loaded a presentation with all these stimuli. If you visit this particular presentation or interactive video, all you gotta do is click on play, and then you maximize here, and then there. And you are taken to the interactive video interface where you can see that below you are given the number of questions that you will be asked. The first stimuli are presented. We are little by little approaching the first question with which the student will interact. So we have the problem that I had already mentioned before. Should he dash across or slide through? And then the system offers us two different options, dash across and slide through, as I already showed before. He should slide through, and the system gives me some feedback telling me that it is correct. And then if I click this button on the upper right corner and continue to the other questions, but before I am presented with the answer. I slide through, so there is further visual stimulation, and we are then presented at the next problem. Should he dash across or slide through? And then we're taken to the question. We have to decide if he should slide through or dash across. I'm going to go for slide through. That's the one. Then I continue so that I can look at the stimulus again. There it is. And next problem, how do we go from A to B? And we're approaching the question, dash across or slide through. We're given two options, dash across or slide through. I'm going to go for slide through. I'm told that that's the right answer. I click on continue, and I can now look at the stimulus showing how he slides through. This continues, and we have the next problem. How do we go from A to B? Should he dash against the robot or should he slide under the robot? I'm going to go for slide under the robot. That's the one. I continue, and I'll be shown the stimulus once again with this little guy sliding under the robot. How does he cross the door? Question, does he dash against it? Should he dash against it or should he slide through it? How can he cross the door? And the answer is he should dash against it. Continue. I'll be shown the motion. So he dashes against it. Next, how can the white knight evade the attack from the giant? And I'll be showing in a moment the questions here in number 6. Should he dash back away? How can he evade the attack? He should dash back. Or the other option is he should slide through the enemy. Answer, he should dash back. And I continue, and I will be able to see how he dashes back. Next, glide and bounce. The stimuli for these two different motion verbs is shown right now: glide down and bounce off a trampoline. This is a way to present my students these two different verbs, gliding and bouncing, are compared. And then the first problem: Ari is too high. How can she go down with care? And we're presented with questions: How does she have to glide down, or should she have to, or should she bounce off? And of course, she should glide down with a feather, which is what we will be able to see in a moment. Right there, she's gliding down. She has to glide down. Next, how can I remove from A to B? That's the question, that's the problem. Should she glide or should she bounce off the trampoline? And I have to choose, and I'm going to go for the second one. She should bounce off the trampoline, and I'll be shown how she does it. So that is, she bounces off the trampoline. Next, how can I remove from A to B? Very similar to the one that we just looked at. Should she glide or should she bounce off the trampoline? And of course, the answer is bounce off. She should bounce off the trampoline. That's what we're going to look at in a moment, right there. Next question: how can I remove from A to B? She's somewhere over here and she has to move above. So should she glide or should she bounce off the trampoline? And of course, she should glide, bounce off the trampoline. So I continue, and I will be shown how she does it. There, she bounces and she reaches the upper part. How can I go down the forest? Should she glide or should she bounce off a trampoline? And of course, she should glide down the hill, and that's what we will be able to see now. So she's gliding down.
It's 5 minutes to go, please.
Yeah, thank you. Next, how can I get from one point to the other? Should she glide or should she bounce off? Of course, here she should bounce off the two trampolines. So we're going to see how she goes to this trampoline, and now she's directing to the other trampoline. Next problem: how can I get here above from here below? Should she glide or should she bounce off the trampoline? And of course, she should bounce off the trampoline, which is what she's about to do. There it is. She bounces off the trampoline. How can I evade the dangers that are on the left side? Should she glide or should she bounce off the trampoline? And the questions are here. So I'm going to go for she should glide over the dangers, and I continue, and I will be shown how that happens. So there she is, gliding over the dangers. The final question is: how can Ari evade all those thorns that are here? Should she glide or should she bounce off a trampoline? And of course, she should glide down, evading the thorns, which is what we will be shown to finish this video. You can see that my score is right there above in the upper right corner. And I am given my score. I have been using these types of materials for almost a year, and the success rate of my students is above 90%. And that's all. That's my
Thank you very much, Sergio. Apologies once more for the mistake at the start of your talk.
Oh, no.
Very interesting, and such beautiful materials that you developed. Very, very beautiful to see. It will no doubt be very interesting for students to see all these moving characters, particularly students who are into gaming, and more young people probably do this, as you showed at the start of your presentation. So there are, I think, a few questions in the chat. Let me have a look.
I raised my hand.
Yes, please do ask Freibert.
Sergio, thank you very much for this interesting material. I wanted to ask you a bit more about how the methodology. How did you apply this material? For how long were you applying it? And how did you test? Could you compare the results? Could you compare your students previous to using this material, let's say in a previous year, and then, you know, another cohort using this material? I wonder if you could talk a bit about that.
No, I have not yet developed a sort of comparison experiment just to see how other ways of approaching these particular motion event construals could either give better or worse results. But I have checked what the results are. On the one hand, using first only the PowerPoint presentation, and then testing my students after they've used the interactive video interface, and that does show a high increase of success. And as I mentioned at the end, my students show above 90%, a success rate of more than 90% in their interactive video interface results.
For how long they are practicing with this platform?
Typically only once. I might have a few students who do want to practice with the same interactive video more than once, but typically only once. Most of my students have to work with 12 subjects. They are studying high school. So because they have so many different subjects, they're always busy. And I guess that's why they usually don't use them more than once.
I think Reina has a question as well. Would you like to come on, formulate the question yourself, please?
Sure. So first of all, I'd like to say that it's really a great idea to use GIFs, which is such omnipresent, right? They are everywhere on the internet. So it's like students certainly connect to that. And then there's a range of different stimuli you can actually work with in the classroom using GIFs. I was thinking that maybe one obstacle that I see in it is that dynamic stimuli can also be interpreted in several different ways, right? So, for example, dashing could be interpreted as running, sprinting, darting, rushing. So how do you approach that in teaching?
That's something that I've actually tried to systematize in two different ways. One that is a little bit more scholastic, so to speak, which is trying to figure out what the prototypes are, which is actually quite difficult. But I do try to establish what the prototypes of each different construction could be. And the other is just what we typically call intuition, which some people say is not, there is no intuition, it's only inference. So that I don't use the vague expression of intuition, I will say that I try to make some educated guesses or inferences as to which constructions I should be using. And I was thinking about when you started asking this, that something that makes it even harder is that because you have two different components of each construction, which is the verb itself and the preposition, and sometimes you can have more than one preposition. There are many different combinations that you could work with. And I am, for worse or for better or worse, I am often constrained by the specific mechanics that each video game offers. So because I am not a video game developer, I cannot develop or design all of the different motion mechanics that I would like to. Sometimes I just gotta work with what each video game already offers. For instance, the one that I was showing at the end is a character that at different stages of the game is constantly bouncing off all these trampolines. So that's the one that I tried to exploit since it does the one that the video game is offering. I would probably like to have other prepositions apart from of, but because the video game already constrains me to what it is showing, I gotta work with that. So those could be more or less the three different factors or criteria that affect the final decisions that I make as to what constructions and stimuli I choose.
Beatrix also has a question. Would you like to formulate it yourself, please?
Thank you. So my question to you, Sergio, would be, when you say success rate, then do you mean that your students are successful on new combinations or on also multiple? So I did notice that in your slides, you had some longer prepositional phrases, structuring, flow trajectory particles. So I wonder how they work with new stimuli.
You mean that there were a few changes from the examples given in the PowerPoint to the way I phrased those constructions in the video?
So I was wondering if they practice, for example, with bounce off, then do they have a chance to show mastery maybe on new combinations of verbs and particles, or on multiple spatial particle and verb combinations?
Yeah, not right now. That's pending work that I have. That's something that I'd like to develop in the future. What I showed you today takes a lot of time because the GIFs, the visual stimuli, take time to develop. Each of these different GIFs that I showed you takes me about, I don't know, probably up to half an hour to get just one visual stimuli. So because the process of designing each stimulus is slow, I haven't been able to reach the point at which I am able to include more complex instantiations in which I could include more than one preposition, but that's something that I would like to do in the future. This is actually something that I started working with just let's say recently, but I do hope that in the future I should be able to develop more complex instantiations with more than one preposition more often.
Thank you.
Are there any further questions? Tony had a question about whether or not, if you have this kind of receptive task, whether you can actually see the results also if you have a productive task. What do you think? Does it transfer or does it not?
No, right now I don't have any productive task. That's another pending, that's more pending work that I have in mind. I've been busy working with other constructions such as going to versus will, so-called present perfect, the preposition over, and I developed these materials having in mind this conference. But because there are so many different constructions that I've been focusing on the stimulation rather than the output that my students can produce. But I'm well aware that that's something that I gotta do in the future.
That sounds like a really good idea. Tony, you have a comment on what kind of methods could be used perhaps to test the production?
Yeah, it was just my house just got very noisy with my grandchildren. And so I just wanted to know, I was thinking maybe some kind of sentence completion overlay that you could put on the screen there as a production task, something simple like that.
A close, you mean a sort of blank space or something?
That's right. You know, on a lot of these visual things, you can put an overlay, like on like a gap fill task.
All right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, the ISL collective interactive video interface does offer other types of of items for questions. I only used multiple choice, and you could notice that I only offered 2 different choices, but there are other different choices. The problem is that it doesn't really offer a way of asking students to verbalize, to orally express what they are learning. But yeah, I think I could and I should exploit other forms of answering the tasks at hand beyond the multiple choice or 2 choices that I have given them in these interactive